Hey guys, it's Ryan here with HobbiesofaMan once again, and today we're doing another check-in video for the month of November. So today we're going to be talking about what I've been watching, what I've been reading, and we're just going to do it kind of in a relaxed kind of way. We're not being too serious today. I'm trying to actually just get through this as fast as possible just because I don't really feel like doing this video today, but it's the right day to do it, so I'm going to anyway. So let's just run through the watch list here. I don't have anything to update you guys on, so let's get through it. So I've been watching a lot of television this month because of what I mentioned last time. I had to make a decision about my classes. I decided to do it, and so that means that I ended up actually getting more time out of my day now because I don't have to take one of those classes anymore. So I dropped a class, and that means that I now have a lot more time to do other things, right? And so I've been using it to just try to relax a little bit, just because I felt like I had been especially last month, just like it was really rough, right? And so I decided to take it easy for the last couple of weeks. So I've been watching a lot of TV, and I've actually been reading a lot. So in terms of what I've been watching, I started watching Dan to Dan. Well, actually I started last month, and I freaking love this series, man. It's so freaking awesome. It's wonderful. It's so hilarious. It's really fun. I love the character designs. I think that the style is really good. It feels like in the last couple of years, we've had an increase in young mangaka and manga creators of all sorts that have an interest in fashion, or that are like what you consider maybe people that are interested in streetwear and stuff like that, right? I'm not someone that is, but I do appreciate how cool it looks, and I feel like maybe this is the influence of Bleach. Or maybe it's something else. I'm not really sure. I would say that it probably is Bleach, right? But we have seen an increase in manga where the outfits of the characters are very cool, very awesome. There's a lot of change to them, and it's really fun to see that, right? And in anime, it makes it even better because watching these characters change outfits and have cool, different vibes to them is really awesome, right? So yeah, overall, Dan to Dan is really great. I know there's a new episode out today. I haven't watched it yet, although I've heard it's pretty sad. So I'm excited to check it out. Then I watched the season of Penguin, and I just finished watching it with my roommate the other day. And wow, this is probably some of the best superhero television I've ever seen. And I want to caveat that it is like only as good as it is compared to other superhero media. I feel like if you compared it to more traditional HBO fare, it's probably on par, maybe less good than some of the other stuff that's on HBO, right? Like that isn't related to superhero IP, right? Like, I mean, maybe you could say that Game of Thrones still has like a fantasy fiction IP, so you could compare it to that, but I don't know. I wouldn't feel comfortable doing that. But I think that in the scheme of superhero shows, the Penguin is by far the best, and maybe it's because it's not really about superheroes. At the end of the day, the Penguin is a gangster show that has very slight trappings, wackiness, and interesting kind of moments here and there that remind you, oh yeah, this is a superhero show, right? And I think the Penguin is amazing. I find that the last episode is the best episode in the series. It really encapsulates so much about what the Penguin is and like the character himself, and it's just really psychotic and crazy, and it makes me so uncomfortable, especially the ending portion there with his mom. So good. I loved it. I think it was awesome. Then I watched Venom: The Last Dance, and well, it wasn't a good movie per se, but it wasn't horrible. Like, it was fine. I wasn't expecting anything amazing, and so because of that, I was entertained, right? Like, I paid $6 for the ticket. I didn't buy any snacks or anything, so $6 was all I spent at the movie theater that day. And for $6, I got my money's worth, right? I spent an hour, maybe 2 hours at the theater. I didn't get distracted at all because I was basically the only person in the theater. And I was able to enjoy something ridiculous for 2 hours. And it fits into my requirements for having a good time at the movies. It maybe even exceeded them because the money I spent was less than usual. And overall, I had a fun time with it. Like, is it a good movie? No, not really. Is it horrible? Also not really. But it is not a good superhero movie. It's just like an interesting, surreal romp is what I would call it. Then I watched Transformers, the original Transformers from 2007. And I gotta be honest with you guys. It's kind of weird to say, but I think it's actually a really good movie. I know that my movie tastes are not the best, right? I agree that I'm easily entertained, but I watched it with my roommate. I don't think he'd ever seen it, or he had seen it once or twice, maybe a long time ago. And even he was like, oh, this is actually not that bad, right? And I think that there's two kind of elements to it that kind of explain why that is, right? First of all, compared to modern movies, the 2007 Transformers movie has a lot of style and a lot of cool vibes to it, right? And I understand that from the perspective of like people that are into filmography, anything that shows up in that movie is probably pretty lame, right? It's pretty basic, like generic, like edgy director type stuff. But from someone that doesn't really understand that, all I can really say is that shot was cool. That looked awesome. I love the lighting. I think it's really cool that everything is really like saturated. And I find that even though I don't necessarily like Sam Witwicky, his interactions with Michaela and the way that all of the characters kind of work together is enjoyable, right? And of course, my favorite part is all of the cool Autobot stuff. The first time that they arrive on Earth, when they change, when they drive up to Sam's house or to meet Sam in like an alleyway somewhere, like all of that stuff is awesome and really cool and really enjoyable. And the music in it is awesome. And it's like not a great movie in terms of plot, but it is a great movie in terms of like being fun and enjoying what's going on the screen, right? So I loved it. Then we watched Fantastic Beasts #1. My roommate had never seen them, or he had only seen one of them randomly, and we had just finished watching all of the Harry Potter movies last month, so we decided to jump on and continue on with Fantastic Beasts. And it's really weird, but it's also pretty enjoyable. So I don't really have too much to say about that, but it is what it is. Then I watched the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie by Michael Bay, the 2014 one, and God, it's horrible. But I remember enjoying it as a teenager, and I can't say that I hate it. It's just not good, especially comparing it to the first Transformers movie that Michael Bay did. Like, it's night and day. Like, the TMNT movie is garbage, but there's something funny about these like nasty, ugly orc like turtle people trying to hit on Megan Fox's April O'Neil. That is pretty funny in like a really disgusting kind of way. I don't know, they're just horrifying creatures. But everything else about it is bad. Then we watched the Jack Reacher, the 2014 version with Tom Cruise. And Jesus Christ, man. Tom Cruise comes off as like a psycho in those movies. Like, Jack Reacher is a very intense kind of guy, right? Like he's very out there, right? But in the movies, I feel like he comes off as like a psychotic person. Whereas in the TV show, he just comes off as someone that's like kind of autistic, or maybe doesn't know how to communicate correctly, which isn't really a problem. I think it's really weird, and I don't know what exactly the difference is, but I don't like the Jack Reacher that Tom Cruise plays. I like the Jack Reacher from the show, and it's also just funny to look at like the people that Tom Cruise has to fight against, being like crazy, like wacky villains compared to the ones that Jack Reacher has to fight, and also like the idea that I'm used to Jack Reacher being the biggest guy in the room, and then seeing like tiny Tom Cruise try to intimidate people is like funny, because it's like, dude, you're like 5'4", like I think he's 5'7", right? But like he looks tiny compared to everyone else. And it just doesn't really work for the idea I have of Jack Reacher in my head, right? So that's really all there is to say about that. I started watching the second Jack Reacher movie as well, the one from 2016, I think, and that one's only slightly better. It's not completely horrible, but it's fine. And then I've been watching Arcane season 2 with a friend of mine. They come over on Sundays, and we're gonna do that for the next couple weeks. And man, it's great. It's amazing. I forgot how beautiful it looks. There is one thing that I didn't like about Arcane so far, at least the second season, and it's that every episode has like 3 needle drops that don't need to be there. Like, I don't know, I don't need these like music montages. Like, they don't really work for me. I don't understand the point of them. But it's not bad. It's just kind of like, okay, we can move on from this like music video shit that's going on, right? So that's kind of my thoughts there on that. That's basically all there is to say about it. But yeah, that's basically it, right? So that's it for what I've been watching. Let's get into what I've been reading, and I will divide it by type today. So in terms of novels, I've been reading quite a bit, actually. So I read Kraken Rider Z, and actually I mostly read this last month, but I left like the last couple pages in the book to read this month so I could count for this month. And so I read Kraken Rider Z, and this was a great novel. So there's some issues with the way the world building works, but broadly speaking, it's a really fun kind of modern version of something like Harry Potter meets Aragon, right? It's this idea of like a character named Z who wants to be a dragon rider because that's like the greatest thing that there is at this point. And in order to be a dragon rider, he would have to go to the academy, but there is this clear social economic division between people that are allowed to go to the academy and people that are not. And Z happens to be on that lower class, right? He's the son of a farmer. And for whatever reason, he ends up finding a Kraken who bonds with him, and so he becomes a Kraken rider. However, because of the way the world works, that's not really something that is thought to be possible until he becomes like 20 years old. Something happens, and he ends up getting to go to the academy, even though he isn't technically a student at the academy, right? And so throughout the whole thing, I just really am enjoying myself a lot. I really like what's going on. I enjoy the story. I love the dynamic between Z and his Kraken called Jessup, right? It's very similar to Aragon and Saphira, or, you know, any other dragon rider, group that you can think of. Maybe the ones from Anne McCaffrey. I don't know what those characters are, so I don't know them. But he gets to the school. He doesn't really get to be at school, and so we don't get to see the Harry Potter element yet, but it's there, right? It will happen eventually. And it's also more or less a cultivation novel, a lit RPG type novel, but without a lot of the lit RPG like crunchiness, right? So it's more of a game lit novel. And it's really great. I really enjoyed it. I have some slight issues with it here and there for certain things that happen, but broadly speaking, it's like a very, very good novel. I recommend it. I finished it and I immediately pre-ordered the second novel that's going to come out here in January, so that was great. Then I read basically what you could consider the first arc of Battle Mage Farmer. So Battle Mage Farmer is a book that I had picked up a while back. Because I bought the first one for like 99 cents. And after reading Kraken Rider Z, I was like, okay, I want something else that features like an animal kind of pretty consistently, right? I looked through all of my books, and Battle Mage Farmer seemed to be the one that did, because every book had an animal on the cover, right? And so I decided to start reading it. And it's not really about the connection between this human and this animal. It's more about a grizzled old soldier who happens to only be 27 years old, deciding to retire and move out to the valley, out kind of in the middle of nowhere, and become a farmer. However, because he is a human that was isekai'd into this world, he still has to kind of follow a game system, right? However, the game system is forcing him to still do things for the betterment of the world, even though his latest quest was to retire. So throughout this first arc that's covered in domestication, germination, and cultivation, we get to see that John has to work through these problems, right? And I really enjoyed it. I think that the development of John as a character is great. I think that the kind of concept of the story is really good, but I did have some issues with the world building a little bit, just because I felt like there was this this idea that was like a mystery at the beginning, but that wasn't really given the consideration necessary from the characters to really consider it a mystery. and there was really no way to figure out what was going on. And then later on in the story, it just gets explained to John in a way that doesn't even feel like he worked for it. And it only gets explained because we have to move on to the next level of issues. And so that has to be cleared up, right? And so that's not my favorite. So overall, I think the Battle Mage is awesome. I really, really enjoyed it. I had a lot of fun with it, especially because it is very similar to reading a Western. But it's not it still manages to be different because it has those game elements that I like, right? So yeah, that's basically been it for that. I've been also trying to dabble in reading more traditional fantasy novels, right? I want to read Codex Alera again. I read it when I was younger, like 8 or 9 years ago maybe, and it's by Jim Butcher. I really like the concepts behind it, so I want to get back to reading it. But every time I've tried to read it this month, I've actually ended up kind of getting distracted by reading something else, by wanting to read something else. And so since I didn't really have a TBR this month, I decided to just kind of go with the flow, right? But I do want to at least try to give myself some structure just so I don't go crazy, right? So yeah, but that's been basically it for the novels. In terms of comic books, there is one I read digitally, and that was Muse. This is by Terry Dodson alongside a French-Belgian creator. I can't remember their names right now, but I know that they're relatively famous, like they're pretty well known. I just don't know their name. And to be fair, I'm not sure that I liked this book. I don't think I hated it. I'm just very nebulous about it because it's not really about the story. It's about making sure that Terry Dodson has a bunch of different interesting kind of things to draw and then kind of forcing them to fit together into a single story. And I don't necessarily think that was the best. Like, there could have been a different way to do it that would have made it easier to understand what it is, but maybe then it wouldn't have been able to be marketed as a comic book, and so it might have not sold as well. I don't know what was going on, but I would like to collect it physically, even though I have it digitally, because I love Terry Dodson's artwork. I think it's amazing, and so I want to have it, but I'm not sure that I want to invest what I would need to invest to own it, because it's severely out of stock, right? Especially now that Humanoids kind of decided to stop having physical printing on stuff. And so it would have to be something that I find with a lot of luck, right? I wouldn't be able to go and track it down because everyone that has it would be selling it for, crazy prices. So we'll see. Okay, so let's keep going here. So I read Muse digitally, and then everything else I've been reading physically. So here we go with Chitara number 4. This is pretty good. I actually enjoyed where it went. I think it's almost done, which is cool. And I think I'm thinking that I'll probably start to wane or to pull back on some of this Thundercat stuff, because there's other things that are coming out that are in the same kind of vein, right? There's Silverhawks coming out in January. There's this other story called The Herculoids. And then there's this other series called The Bug Wars, right? And they all seem to be pretty similar to Thundercats. And although I'm enjoying Thundercats, I feel like it's moving a bit slow for my taste, right? And I think I'll probably end up having to cut back on some of the Thundercats stuff and pick up those series instead. So, yeah, although Thundercats number 9 kind of did give me this idea that maybe that's not the right thing to do, because I feel like after these 8 issues that we've had, the story finally has enough detail around it to really make it, easy for a lot of action stuff to happen, right? A lot of cool things to start happening. Moon Ra seems to finally start to get involved, and the battle with the mutants is getting really serious, right? So I'm really unsure how to feel about this stuff. I'm not really sure what the right move is yet, but I'm thinking about maybe dropping some of the Thundercat stuff. Going forward, I'll just have to take it, and play it by ear, right? Because I don't want to continuously have to buy them, but I also don't necessarily want to not have them, if that makes sense, right? So we'll see. And then I have Kill All Immortals number 4. This was pretty great. I actually really, really enjoyed it. I think it was pretty fun. I think the most interesting part here was that it proves that Freya's family, it was correct. This guy that she was with wasn't really into her, but rather her secrets, right? So I thought that was interesting. It's not great because proving that the evil bastard of a dad is correct is maybe not the right thing to do, but I think it's a very interesting concept to have played with, right? So I liked it. You have Red Sonja number 15. it seems like the story is finally wrapping up here with issue 18, so that's great. I think that this has been a okay run. I really enjoyed the beginning. I think that the middle really kind of dipped in quality, at least in storytelling. I think the artwork has been phenomenal throughout. I really enjoy Walter Giovanni's artwork. And I think in this issue specifically, his artwork really shined. There was this moment where we get to see Sonia in this really beautiful blue outfit that I really like. So that was great. But I am happy that it's finally wrapping up. It's only 3 more months, and then I'll be able to stop collecting Red Sonja, at least for a couple of years, right? Or maybe a few months, depending on what happens next. Unless they get some like awesome creators, I'm probably gonna stick to just not collecting it anymore, because even though I really like the concept of the character, I feel like most of the time the execution is not very good. And it took me a few years to learn that, but I'm kind of clear on that now, right? So yeah. However, Witchblade is a character that's female that has a great kind of backstory to them that I think is being executed very well. I really enjoyed this issue, although it's more of a transitionary issue. Really, we're getting to the point where Sarah is understanding her place with the Witchblade. Things are moving forward, the darkness is approaching, and this might be the necessary thing to really unleash Sarah's need to be a superhero, or to be this avenging female figure in this world, right? And I'm really happy about that. I think it's really cool. There's a lot of character drama here too. We get to see that Sarah is mad at Ian for the way that he interacts with her. Although it's a bit jarring in my opinion. It's a bit very like it's completely understandable. Like I get what the point is, but I feel like maybe another issue to build that kind of jarring, decision might have been necessary, right? Because it feels like last time she was super into him, and then now she's really upset with him. And maybe there's an explanation there that we haven't gotten yet that we'll get next issue, but in general, it felt a bit jarring for my taste, right? Transformers number 14 was awesome. I really enjoyed this. There was a reference to Gundam in this, where Starscream gets attached to a tank, and he looks like a gun tank, and that was awesome. I love that. I actually really enjoyed this story as well for the part of that Starscream plays as the hero of the story, but also a very nefarious character, and yet also immensely sympathetic, because you understand where the fall was for Starscream, right? After he took the name, we get shown to us that he was forced to be Megatron's right-hand man, and that really broke him, right? And I really appreciate that. I think it's really cool. Here I have Helen of Windhorn number 6. This was a great ending to the story. However, it shows something that I had been thinking about for a while, which is that I don't necessarily like the framing device that's used, because like it's useful, but it intrudes a bit too much for my taste onto the story. It makes it so that the story doesn't really get the focus that I think it deserves sometimes, where we're focusing on these side characters that have nothing to do with the actual story. And they were mostly missing in this, which is why I feel like it's true that what I was saying, right? This story was mostly about Helen, and we finally get her origins. And it seems like this is only chapter 1 in the story. The story is going to continue and become bigger, and it seems like Tom King and Belkis Evely are going to create this awesome spanning saga of Helen of Windhorn, right? And I feel like it's a little bit like Conan the Barbarian, right? It's a little bit like Elric as well, but it's also a little bit like Narnia, and I really appreciate that. I think it's really interesting that to have that combination, right? So I like that. You have Heatseeker Combustion. This is the second story. This is a great cover by David Nakayama. And again, I think that Heatseeker is a story that, writing-wise is on par with Gun Honey, but art-wise it's just not there. And it's just not great. I'm very upset about that, because I think that a lot of Gun Honey's charm comes from the artwork, right? From this awesome, very sexy, very interesting artwork. And it's just not present in Heatseeker. At the same time, Heatseeker is kind of necessary for you to read, so you understand where Joanna and Burrow are, while they're not there, right? Like it's a very important kind of connecting tissue. So you can't really miss it per se. I mean, you can, but you'll be a little bit lost in the first issue of the next Gun Honey series, right? So I feel like I'm kind of trapped in this story. I have to be here, otherwise I won't really get it. And that's not a great feeling to promote in your customers. At the same time, I do like the story, even if the artwork isn't my favorite. So I feel really weird about it. But it is what it is. Here we have the moon is following us. We finally understand what's going on, sort of. And this was a great issue to explain stuff, right? Like the previous one was all about getting you interested in the story. This one is really about explaining what's going on, and I really, really liked it. It's not one that I'm doing in a issue-by-issue coverage because I don't really think Daniel Warren Johnson's style really works that way. I mean, it works for Transformers, but that's just because that's a bit different. Like, he has an IP, he's not really working on his own thing, right? And I think that this is a bit more personal, and so I would prefer not to look at it until there's more to the information, right? So there's more to the story. So that's why I'm not really doing it via, the weekly chapters, also just because I had too many of them going on, and I still do, but I hope that with Red Sonja ending, we'll have a little bit of a respite there. Then we have My Adventures with Superman. This is the end of it. It was a pretty good ending. I liked it. I still think that this should have ended right when the series started again, right? And maybe if they do another one of these, they'll make sure that happens for season 3. But I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen, right? So, yeah. And then we have Green Arrow number... well, actually, this doesn't have a number. I guess this would be technically issue number like 16 or 17. But it's actually annual number 1. This is the ending to Joshua Williamson's run with Arrow, with the Green Arrow. And another thing that kind of is interesting about this is that it also feels like the end of the character. Like, if you read this, you could potentially say the character is done. There is nothing left to tell for him. And it's really interesting that they allowed him to do that, because there is a finality to the story that really makes it weird that the story is going to continue after this issue. The fact that, Joshua Williamson left to work on other things is understandable, and it makes sense. But the way that he ends the story feels like this is the end of the character. And I like that, because personally it means that I'm happy to stop reading Arrow after this, Green Arrow after this, but I find it weird from the perspective of like a company that is trying to make sure that you always want to buy their stuff, right? So, I don't know. I really liked it though. I thought it was good. You have Savage Sword of Conan number 5. This is probably the worst issue, in my opinion. And it's not because of the storytelling or the artwork necessarily, although I didn't like some of the artwork. It's about the fact that this feels like they did it badly, which is weird, because I feel like by issue 4, it had been clear that they knew what was going on. They knew what they were doing. There were still some issues with the materials that were being used, but there wasn't any problems with the way that the stories and the system was set up. However, in this one, they kind of proved that that's wrong, that was a bad assumption on my part, and that the team has no clue what the fuck they're doing. And that's really sad, because that's not the impression I got. It almost feels like a different team worked on this magazine than previously. And I'm not really sure where the confusion comes from. I don't know what's going on. I mean, it's issue 5. Like, you've been working on this for a year. You should not have stupid mistakes. And they also did this thing where they included 2 different pinups that were smaller than the magazine. And so there's a lot of border around the artwork. And even though the artwork was fine, it wasn't bad. I mean, it wasn't to my taste, but it wasn't like objectively bad. Giving pinups that have borders means that I am not getting my money's worth. And that doesn't really seem like a good idea to make your customers feel, right? Like, why would you make it possible for me to think that I'm not getting what I paid for? Like, fuck, dude, that's stupid. Why would you do that, right? So it is what it is. But yeah, then I read Superman Supercore. This is volume 1 in Joshua Williamson's run on Superman. And man, it's wonderful. I really enjoy the artwork here. Jamal Campbell does a great job. I really like the way he draws. Sometimes I feel like Superman looks a bit too... I don't know what to call it. Like, too refined, too... I don't know. I feel like Superman should not be pretty. He should be kind of like, maybe not even like dashing, but robust, I guess is the way that I would describe him. And sometimes he looks a bit too pretty for my taste, but everything else about this is wonderful. It's really, really enjoyable. I loved it. I think that the storytelling was good. A lot of it was familiar to me because I already read some of it. And so it wasn't necessarily the most exciting thing to read, but I really enjoyed myself with this. I had a lot of fun with it. I thought it was great. I enjoyed the artwork. And it ended in a way that feels great because it introduces a lot of extra information about the people that work at the Daily Planet, and makes it so that these characters can become more important later on. I don't know if they do or not, but I'm very excited to get the second volume. However, I've noticed that they're only really printing some of these in hardcover and not others, and so I feel like I have to go track down a paperback of this volume of Supercore so that I can have the rest of it in paperback as well, because they don't have any hardcovers for the rest of the volumes, and that's annoying. So I don't know when I'll get that, but I will eventually. Then I also read some Ultimate Spider-Man. This is the original version, and I basically know exactly what's going on here because I've watched the Comic Pop videos of Ultimate Spider-Man like multiple times. So nothing about this story was particularly amazing, and I'm not sure that I love the artwork in this first volume. I'm still not used to it, but what I did enjoy was that a lot of this reminds me of the Andrew Garfield movies, and it's because the Andrew Garfield movies just stole from this. There's like even a scene that is word for word, or basically taken from this comic book and put into the Andrew Garfield movies, right? When Uncle Ben is telling Peter about his dad and his saying, and then Peter's like, okay, so where is he? Why is he not here taking care of his son, right? Like if he had the power to do so, why is he not here, right? And I found that to be pretty cool. I enjoyed that. I'm really liking Ultimate Spider-Man. Like the writing is good. So I'm gonna read more of it. I think I might track down some more volumes of it just because I really want to be able to read a lot of it in one go. But it's not something I'm gonna do reviews for. Maybe I'll do like a cumulative kind of talking point about it. Like, hey, you know, I've been reading this amount of Ultimate Spider-Man. Here's what I think about it. I'll do a review like that at some point, but I'm not going to do it, you know, arc by arc like I do for everything else. So we'll see what happens with that when it does. But you know, ultimately, I am enjoying myself and what I'm reading this month in terms of comic books. So yeah, all that's left is to talk about manga, but I'm not going to be able to do that comfortably with a stack of these on my lap. So okay, let's finish up since I really haven't read too much manga this month. So I read One Piece, Shokugeki no Sanji. This is pretty fun, actually. This was basically, there was a chapter of this that came out every couple of years, depending on kind of a celebration that was happening, right? And eventually they were like, okay, there's enough for a volume here, so let's collect it, right? And this kind of tells a complete story in a sense, right? You start right before Sanji and Luffy meet, and then you end with a prequel story to kind of tie in with what's happening at Whole Cake, right? And so you kind of get everything you need to know about Sanji and cooking in the One Piece world through this. However, there's a lot of room for more stories, and I think that would be fun to have multiples of these, right? Shokugeki no Sanji number 2. But it doesn't seem like there's any plans for that because there's no volume 1 anywhere on this book, right? And so I think that this book is for people that have kind of two specific interests. If you like One Piece, and if you like foodie manga, or food in general, you enjoy the art of cooking, and you want to see what that would look like in One Piece, you should buy this book, and you should enjoy it. There are a few things that I can complain about, and actually it's just one thing, and that is that, as always, Viz completely disrespects its customers and the IP that it clearly is trying to use to make us waste our money on them by not including color pages. Now, I can't remember if they're included in the digital version or not, but regardless, this is way more expensive than it should be because it's $12. If you're charging me $12, the least you could do is give me the 3 stupid color pages that are included in the story that are clearly supposed to be in color that, you know, you chose not to give us. There's really no reason why these should not exist in color other than Viz was lazy, right? If you have to charge me an extra $1, which I don't think you should because this is already too expensive, I would probably be willing to pay for it because I would be getting the best product possible. This is not the best version of this book available. And the fact that there is like no reason why it shouldn't be the best product, the best version of this book available, it makes me pretty angry. And this is something that I have against Viz all the time. I think with Kodansha, it bothers me a little bit less because I think of Kodansha as like a lesser version of a manga publisher anyways. And so them not being that good and not giving color pages on everything is understandable because like, yeah, they're kind of garbage, right? But I hold Viz to a certain standard and they constantly fail to meet it. And I don't understand why. Because they do it for like Kaiju number 8. And I love Kaiju number 8. I think it's a great series. But One Piece is the manga series. Why does it not get color pages everywhere it can? I don't understand. And it really bothers me. So I really enjoyed the book. But there was a certain level of disappointment that I felt while reading it every time I got to a color page. Right? So, yeah. Here we have Blue Lock, episode Nagi. This is book 1 of 3, I think. And I didn't really like the movie, so I already knew what was in here. But for whatever reason, I enjoyed it better in a manga. And I'm not really sure why that is. I have the same issue here that I had with the Viz one, which is that there's no color, even though they should be in color. But I'm pretty sure I'm used to that because I don't think Blue Lock has ever had anything in color. So it's not, like, it bothers me a lot. But like I said, I already expect Kodansha to be worse than Viz, so it's whatever. There is one issue with this book, and it's that it's more expensive than the other Blue Lock books, and I'm not really sure why. It should be the exact same. This is $14. Most Blue Lock books are $13. I'm not sure why the difference in cost exists, but I don't think it should. Especially because this is just a retelling of the first volume of Blue Lock. It basically ends right after the tag game that they have at the beginning of the Blue Lock program. And so there really isn't anything extra here. And maybe that's why it charges more, because they know that less people are going to buy it. I'm not really sure. I don't believe that they should have charged more. But I did get an extra thing when I bought this. So for me, the cost is not that big of a deal because I bought this for $14. Alongside it, I got this cool little Shikishi board, which is a special board that has like a printed on signature from the creators. So to me, the value that added is high enough for me to not feel like I got stolen from, right? To feel that the $14 that I had to pay for this book are worth it. But in terms of content, in terms of like what's in there, and if you don't get that Shikishi board, which most people probably won't, because it was an exclusive for Kinikiniya, I feel like you're probably not getting the best value for your money, right? So maybe you might not want to buy this. It really depends on how much of a fan of Blue Lock you are. But there, it is what it is, right? So you decide for yourself. And finally, I read the guy she wasn't interested at all. What she was interested in wasn't a guy at all. And this is the Mexican edition. As you guys can see right there, that's Panini Manga. There's nothing in this in Spanish, so I guess you can't really say. Well, the back is in Spanish. This is interesting. It has a dust jacket, and the inside has these fun little things. I bought this from Mexico because it was cheaper than buying it from the Yen Press edition, and because it came out faster than the Yen Press edition, and because I didn't believe that Yen Press would respect the very interesting green coloring all over this, right? I didn't think that they would do that correctly, and so I decided to just buy the Mexican edition. And it also came with this, right? So there you go. I really enjoyed this. It's not necessarily the most cohesive story. There's some issues where sometimes it feels like some elements are missing, but the concept is good. A gal and an emo kid find themselves in some sort of pseudo crush with each other, but it turns out that they're actually classmates, and the emo kid is actually a girl, and she sits right next to this gal character. And so the story initially is about the likelihood of them interacting and finding out each other's secrets. Then the kind of plot moves on from that, and it's mostly about finding out a way for these characters to interact with each other without having to have two separate sets of interactions, right? Because the characters kind of end up interacting as like the guy character and the gal in some situations, and as fellow classmates in others. And so the concept throughout most of this book is actually how to bridge that gap. And it's really enjoyable. I had a lot of fun with it. I love the concept of the coloring. The way that it works is really interesting. It's clearly because it was a digital book, but the fact that was respected and printed in color is great. I really enjoyed the feel of it. I thought that was one of the best books I've ever gotten from Panini Manga in terms of like how it feels. I really enjoyed it. I'm gonna do a review for it here soon, but I recommend you guys check it out. I don't know if Yen Press is really respecting all of that stuff. I know that they did say a sale where they had a special Shikishi board. I didn't really want it because I wasn't even sure I liked the story, since I hadn't read it at the time. But now I kind of regret not getting it, but it's not that big of a deal for me. I have an edition that has special stuff to it as well, so it's not a big problem for me. But yeah, those are my thoughts on everything that I've been watching and reading this month. Let me know what you thought down below. Let me know what you've been watching and reading. What has been your favorite thing to read this month? Let me know down below. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching, and see you guys later.